So the two statements I could make up till now is that by disclosing the fact that the Italians had broken ranks and wished to adopt a ceasefire attitude, he was indeed saying that there was some opposition to the level of aggressiveness of the U.S. NATO approach. So he scores highly there in the narrative. However, the Italian foreign minister breaking ranks is not something you can really cover up very easily on news shows of this kind. You could. You certainly could. So we give him credit for that. But then he goes on to say that only one person would benefit from this, which is Gaddafi, which is part of the narrative, which is that we will never look at the Libyan loyalists, the people of the state of Libya who wish to be in that state, or perhaps simply don't wish all their assets carted off in the middle of a quote-unquote crisis, like what happened to Iraq. Most Iraqis don't like what happened to their country. They may not have liked Hussein, but what happened was a pretty stiff dose of medicine, everything destroyed. So at any rate, he is equating all Libyans that are loyalists to simply Gaddafi on the assumption that Gaddafi is evil and everyone hates him and they're all in fear of him. And so this is poor scholarship according to our narrative.
It certainly is, Martin. And we actually had the opportunity to ask the Prime Minister al-Mahmoudi that question about fatigue, and he sort of smiled and was a bit dismissive of it. He said that it's been a very long time since he's spoken to the Foreign Minister and that he considers him a friend. He said he welcomes his calls for a ceasefire, but he almost laughed when I asked him the question. It was part of an event today that just a few members of the press were taken to. The Prime Minister has a meeting every week with his ministers. Today he came out and told us that they're in the process of writing up a constitution. The country's been working on one, he said, since 2005, but there were some unspecified hang-ups, he told us. They're also going to restructure the judicial system, the educational system, as well as the entire economy. He was basically talking about the restructuring of this entire country, leaving some of us wondering if he's actually in the same country that we've been trying to cover for the last few months. It was almost a surreal experience. Then he said that he wanted to reach out to the rebels in the East, his brothers. They should come to the table and negotiate. This is also interesting because when we go out on events, oftentimes people will pull us aside and say that they are afraid of talking against this government and opposing it.
Okay, so what this lady is doing is she gets a bad score on the omission of Libya as a place with a leading educational and healthcare system and so forth, to be dismissive of this when, for example, even Dennis Kucinich, the congressperson, had talked about their interest in e-democracy. She's clearly ignorant, or she is suppressing information, in my opinion, and we can go into this in greater detail. That's number one. And number two, for her to say this is surreal, of course she's never read a biography of Gaddafi. So this person is not there to do investigation. She is there to ape journalism.
In any way, because they fear they're going to be arrested. Martin?
Now, going back to this.
Okay, so this cuts back to this point of these journalists that are clearly very hostile to Libya, and by providing this disinformation, which I just demonstrated to you so far, unless you believe the narrative wholly yourself. So she's filled in those parts. Now, on the other hand, she did mention what they did at the meeting, but by her incredulity, and then talking about the smile, it's clear that they do not have good, in my view, they are antagonists with each other, which is not the proper role of a journalist and a government. But the captive media element is a problem. It doesn't just apply to the U.S., it applies to Iran, Russia, it applies to Al Jazeera to some extent. So let's listen.
Italian foreign minister. Some Western nations have actually pointed out that the Italians seem more worried about losing an important trading partner if Gaddafi falls as opposed to being concerned about the humanitarian crisis if he stays in power. Do you get the impression that the Italians are secretly supporting this lunatic leader?
Okay, now we get two in one. So he attacks Frattini on the assumption that the Italian foreign minister's first interest is his self-interest, which in and of itself doesn't need to be discussed in a sneering fashion. And then he goes on to describe Gaddafi as a lunatic, and Gaddafi is not a lunatic. Gaddafi armed most of the revolutionary movements, which is an extremely ballsy thing to do. And African National Congress was one of them. No, I just want you to have the alternate facts. It's not that I'm advocating for any side. I'm just trying to get the facts out, and there's outrage when they're suppressed. So it tends to make me sound sympathetic to Gaddafi, but that is not my intention at all. And it's not because I'm afraid of sounding sympathetic. It's simply not the case that I am dealing with my sympathies for anyone other than getting the proper information out. So the other aspect here is his, so he characterizes Gaddafi as a lunatic, which also, all right, I think that's enough for now.
Well, I don't know if I would go that far. There probably are some concerns about what kind of government would replace a Gaddafi regime, and Italy is not the only country that has vested interest. The UK as well has heavy investments here too, and that's part of this effort by NATO. And also, one of the reasons why the U.S. is only in a support role, the U.S. does not have those kinds of economic ties to this country, and much of an argument that it is part of our interest. But certainly in Italy's case, it is, and it would be very distressing for NATO and other Western leaders to see Italy reach out a hand to the Gaddafi regime, only making his position in this country even stronger. Martin?
What is the latest on the fighting itself? Do you know if the rebels themselves have made any key gains in recent days?
No real progress. It is a kind of stalemate. There's been a little bit of progress in the southwest mountains, and there's been a lot of fighting in the area around Misrata, but there was shelling overnight from Gaddafi forces into the actual city of Misrata, a disconcerting development because they had been pushed out of that city and had difficulty reaching it there with mortars, and now proving that they are close enough to do that. So no real big movements. And then the other front in between Davia and the oil town of Breda, rebels have been mired down in that desert on the coast there for months, showing no real sign or ability to move forward. And it seems a kind of Gaddafi game plan to sort of sit back, make sure the rebels don't make any new advancements. And they aren't being particularly harmed at this point, it seems, by the NATO bombings. They're just sort of sitting here waiting to see what happens. Martin?
NBC's Stephanie Gosk, as ever, thank you so much, and you stay safe.
All right. Well, that part I don't have any objection to. So it's really largely minor aspects of the narrative, but it does contaminate the objectivity entirely. It does. So we'll pause. All right. So let's take a look at another one.
For the standing of the United States in the wider world, Senator John Kerry said today, pulling out of Libya would be a grave mistake.
It would be a moment of infamy, frankly, that would reinforce the all too common misperception on the Arab street that America says one thing and does another.
Yeah, we said we were going to help Iraq and invade it and bomb it, and we did. And we said we were going to invade Afghanistan, and we did. We said we were going to kill people in Pakistan with drones, and we did. I don't think that the problem isn't what we say and then changing our mind. The problem is the moral character of our position. So in this respect, I believe this is disinformation of a new kind, so let's log it. Disinformation, changing course, sends a message of vacillation. Okay.
Fawaz Gerges is Director of Middle East Centre at the London School of Economics, and he joins us now from London. Good afternoon, sir. You're just back yourself from the Middle East. Is Senator John Kerry right when he says that a pullout in Libya would be a moment of international infamy for the United States?
Well, I think it will mean the end of the NATO mission in Libya for sure. I think now there are tremendous strains on NATO, Martin, as you all know. In particular because of the civilian casualties, in particular because NATO has not been as effective as the European leaders have made it very clear, and also because Gaddafi seems to be deeply entrenched. This is a very prolonged conflict, and we're talking not just about weeks, we're not talking about months, in fact we're talking about a year or two before we see an end to the Libyan conflict. And the United States' role is really marginal in this equation. But symbolically, if the United States pulls out, this really would mean the beginning of the end of the NATO mission in Libya.
Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that NATO's mission would collapse if America itself withdrew any support?
Well, Martin, let's be blunt. The United States is the greatest power in the international system. We're not just talking about symbolically, militarily, and economically and politically. The United States is still seen and perceived as the leader of the Western world. NATO really means the United States as the leader of NATO itself. In the first few days of the campaign, the United States played the most pivotal and critical role in the bombing in Libya. And the reality is there are many disagreements among NATO members, as you all know, via the Libyan mission. You really have only Britain and France who are determined to pursue the campaign against Gaddafi. The Italians waver, the Germans are against it.